The medieval ages. Talk about a generation I wish I was born in. Born too late to frolic in meadows and ride my pet dragon. Born too soon to see scientists work their freaky magic on interweaving strands of DNA to bring dragons back. Mind you, I really shouldn't be getting off topic in the first 3 sentences of this video, but that just reminded me of some really odd experiences I encountered when I was 8, left to peruse the internet of the early 2000s on my own. A fact I've not shied away from bringing up numerous times because I'd rather be the one than anyone else standing behind myself ringing the bell. Shame. Is that as a child I was obscenely obsessed with anything medieval fantasy, and I mean obscenely. That I have this one weird, hazy core memory of me going down a rabbit hole of rudimentary old sites that would teach me spells or rituals in order to obtain a dragon egg. Or even more hyper-specifically, I came across a page that was selling an allegedly incredibly rare flower that if you ate on a full moon, it would turn you into a werewolf. The amount of self-restraint I possessed from not entering my mom's credit card details into what was most certainly a scam was phenomenal. Or maybe it just had something to do with me not knowing how online purchases worked. But unfortunately, the medieval times were, realistically, not that fun nor exciting. I would not have been battling orcs in my free time. Rather, I'd more likely have been wet off at 12 before I even knew what my favorite color was. I have 3 kids by the age of 15, died off from the bubonic plague at 17, and if I was lucky enough to escape that, likely have been burned at the stake for being called a witch because I was caught in a field eating a bunch of flowers trying to figure out which one would turn me into a werewolf. We have progressed a lot as a society since then, and I think no better way to exemplify this would be to take a look at the laws that were in place during this rather long time, considering the Middle Ages began around 476 AD and ended between the 1400s to the 1450s. That's 1,000 years. Plenty of time for some incredibly weird and wacky laws to be set in place, for me to come along like another 1,000 years later and put nicely into a silly tier list. Number 1, the crime, blowing your nose in public. Or even just having a cold in public for that matter. Apparently, most recognized in the early 1600s, Newmarket, a town in the English county of Suffolk, was deemed the birthplace of horse racing. Over time, as horse racing in Newmarket grew into a large business, the town was forced to establish laws to protect horses, including one that made it legal for people to blow their noses on the street. This was to reduce the risk of horses getting sick. The punishment? Pay a fine. I'm gonna put this at a B. I'm biased because I'm a horse girl and I'm all for protecting horses, horse rights, and this law makes a lot of sense, unlike a majority of the other ones I have written down here. The only thing that would suck would be the prospect of catching a stray sneeze and then immediately being hunted down and forced to take a fine, knowing that you can't like talk back or justify yourself and be like, sir, my nose is just itchy, because I would, rather get a fine than turn that into a beheading. Plus, you know what might just be the worst feeling in the world ever? Is when you want to blow your nose, but you're in a public setting or something where you can't. Like if you're in class or something, and I mean, I guess you could, but I don't know about you, but I hate blowing my nose around people. It's really gross. So perhaps the fine would be the lesser of 2 evils. Number 2, the crime. No wearing long, pointy shoes. Or more broadly, no wearing clothes that make you look wealthier than you are if you're a low-level peasant. No drip allowed, essentially. In 1463, a law passed that said, no knight under the rank of lord, esquire, or gentleman, nor any other— why am I doing this with my hand? No knight under that of a lord, esquire, or gentleman, nor any other person shall wear any shoes or boots having spikes or points which exceed the length of 2 inches. 6 inches is for the real man. This was because back as the fashion trend in the 15th century Britain determined, it was believed that the longer the toe, the more masculine and richer the wearer was. So these long, pointy, should I be knowing how to pronounce that? I'm like a source of information right now. I probably should know.
Krakow.
It was Krakow. Or is that just because she's American? No, she's not American.
Krakow.
How to pronounce Krakow. Like the cat, like the animal. As I was saying, these long, pointy-toed Krakow shoes were all the rage. And God forbid anyone threaten the feudal hierarchy and rich people's sense of exclusivity. It's like how middle-aged women will clutch at their pearls when they see you thrifting a slightly worn but still in very good condition Bottega Veneta bag. Like, your filthy hands should be holding that shit. The punishment was also a fine, estimated to about 20 shillings, or a little under 700 pounds today. Which is a lot of money. Kind of messed up, because you know that money is immediately going to go towards them buying another shiny new pair of Krakow shoes. But I'll give it a D, because I think it sucks that anyone should try to control what you wear. But also, I don't think you'll die if you don't cop a pair of Krakow shoes. In fact, I think your chances of survival are probably higher when you're not slapping around and tripping on those things. Number 3. No eating more than 2 courses. At first, I wasn't necessarily surprised by this because, food rationing was obviously a whole thing back in the Middle Ages, but then I found out it was put in place partly to, once again, prevent peasants from emulating the lifestyle of their superiors. Which is just fucked up, man. I don't even really eat seconds because I'm too lazy to cook a ton of food at once, but trust me, when I was still living with my mum, I was eating seconds, thirds, appetizers, sides, desserts. But then Edward III rubbed this in by stating, quote, "Many mischiefs were directly caused by the many sorts of costly meats which people of this realm have used, believing that overconsumption directly correlated to increased violence, blasphemy, and even sexual desire."
Oh yeah!
The punishment, I couldn't really find out what exactly, but some sources say that the punishment to gluttony in general was death by overfeeding, which seems a little bit excessive, but then again, the Middle Ages weren't necessarily known for being very civilized.
So I am the villain.
Either way, I'm gonna put this one at an F, because ain't nobody can tell me how much I can and I can't eat, okay? Gluttony is my problem. As established in 1313, no entering the Houses of Parliament with weapons or a suit of armour. That's fair enough. Fun fact, the law was also never repealed either, so it's still illegal to do so. The weird thing about this rule, however, is that there's actually a law also against dying in the Houses of Parliament. The punishment? I don't know, man. It probably doesn't matter very much considering you'd already be dead, which in itself sucks. But I think it's just a little mean that, like, on top of dying, which is already taking a huge L, you're then announced a felon and slapped another L. I don't think many people plan their deaths considering it could have been a heart attack or something. So, F tier. Let him rest in peace, man. Number 5. No playing tennis. In 1485, it became illegal for young men who weren't nobles to play tennis, as it was believed to disrupt labor and encourage gambling in workers because participants were left in unsupervised situations without their masters around. Again, just a bunch of rich people's knees chattering in fear that the stable boy could rip a forehand down a line better than he could. The punishment could vary depending on the time and place. Generally, it could involve fines, public shaming, or even corporal punishment, such as being whipped or put in the stocks. I'm gonna put this at a B, simply because you're not gonna die from a lack of tennis. If anything, I would suggest that you're probably more likely to die from too much tennis. And I say this as someone who played tennis competitively for 10 years. The trauma remains. If you know, you know.
Warm-ups? Yeah. Alright, here we go.
Number 6. A little bit freaky, if you will. Or anti-freaky, rather. No sex on certain days of the week. In the Middle Ages, there were pretty obviously a number of religious laws that try to restrict when a person could have sex. In an average 7-day week, a married couple could only have intercourse 4 of the days. Days in which it was prohibited include Thursday and Friday because people were supposed to prepare for Holy Communion Sunday because obviously the Lord's Day. Now let's take a guess at how many people probably definitely broke this rule. The punishments were fittingly imposed by the church, more spiritual and penitential ones rather than legal ones. Confessions and penance and public shaming. The shame thing I was talking about earlier, except about me wanting to be a wolf opposed to getting laid.
Oh yeah!
I'm gonna put this one at a C because honestly, I feel pretty indifferent about it. I mean, you either abided it or you didn't, right? You either confessed or you zipped your mouth. Like, how would they know, right? It's not like they had informants lying under everyone's beds, right? Number 7. I fuck with this one, okay? No scamming people on bread. Back in England in the 13th century, they took their bread and beer shit seriously, seeking to reduce competition amongst bakers by fixing price of bread and beer. It stipulated that the fluctuations in the price of wheat would determine not the price of the loaf, but its weight, and if beer was fixed price by gallon. Punishments? Surprisingly harsh, actually. It could range from fines to public shaming or even corporal punishment. Bakers who shortchanged their customers by selling underweight loaves could be dragged through the streets on a wooden sled or put in a pillory, while brewers producing substandard ale would be liable to the same punishment. Kind of hardcore for like a small loaf of bread. I mean, hell, they do this shit at the grocery store nowadays. Bring that kind of energy back instead of making it every time I scan a, beep, loaf of bread at the self-checkout, my total immediately balloons to $20. Like, I don't even want that bread anyway. Now that I think about it, I haven't even eaten bread really in a very long time. I saw the only bread I consume nowadays is like a monthly Subway sandwich, a little treat if you will. Can you imagine splitting a Subway sandwich with like someone in the medieval ages? Like how would that... Sorry, anyway. A tier. Bring it back. Number 8. If you're a pub landlord, or the owner of a pub, or whatever, I hate to inform you of this, but under the Metropolitan Police Act of 1839, for example, it is illegal for the keeper of a public house to permit drunkenness on the premises, i.e. work that hustle, make your bread, but not underweight, sell your beer, but not underweight either, but also ensure that somehow nobody gets drunk under your roof. Otherwise, you're going in the slammer. Well, the punishments are more so fines than imprisonment, but if you kept getting caught breaking the rules, then that could upscale into license revocation, or even then imprisonment. But let's be real, I struggle to see how this would have been enforced in a way that was fair or even just realistic. The laws put in place intending to maintain public order and prevent disorderly behavior, but this is within London. And I fear that trying to wrench a pint out of a middle-aged British man's beefy hands would cause more misconduct than just letting the man drink his damn beer. E tier. If you're a hunter, then I already don't like you, but trust me, the crown in 1198 would have hated you far more. Following the Norman conquest, large parts of England were designated as royal forests and were retained as hunting grounds for the king. These laws reserved vast areas of land exclusively for the king's use, prohibiting commoners from hunting or even collecting firewood without permission. So if you were like just trying to feed yourself and your family, or God forbid, saw a stick on the ground that you were like, whoa, that's a cool stick, I need that. Think again. The punishments? Hold your horses, because this is kind of insane. While other people were like violently killing and pillaging each other and stuff during the Middle Ages, if you were caught taking something from a billion square mile of forest that the monarchy greedily declared was their own, you would be ordered to, hear me out, blinding, and that's not all. Castration as punishment. Not because you hunted a deer, but because you hunted a deer on royal grounds. Or perhaps because you just picked up a log in the ground. You have done the unthinkable. What if that king was looking forward to playing with that stick after his important meetings? You think about that? What if the deer that you just cooked and ate was actually the king's best friend that, again, when he rose from his chambers, he would stand out on the top of a rolling hill and whistle to, and it would come cantering to him, and he would vent to it about all his problems. In 1209, court records note that a certain Hugh the Scot was accused of doing just this. Hugh fled in a church where he remained for a month before he disguised himself as a woman and fled. The Middle Ages were weird. Man, what a time to be alive, and not in a good way. I'm gonna give this one an F tier, because listen, I'm all about protecting animals, but we know damn well this wasn't about protecting animals in the slightest, or stick welfare. Number 10, the crime. Letting your dog mate and or have offspring with any dog from the royal family, Queen Elizabeth II's corgis included. Enough said there. I don't know the punishment because I doubt anyone's ever been in the position where they could break this rule. That being said, it's kind of funny that this law is in place at all. Like, what if it was an accident? B tier. Number 11. Hear me out. Once again, in Scotland, you are legally not allowed to turn anyone away if they knocked on your door and asked to use your bathroom because they're busting and they can't wait anymore. Sorry, let me reword that. In Scotland, you're still technically not allowed to turn someone away if they need to use your bathroom because they're busting and they can't wait any longer. Now, as far as my research went, this is actually not confirmed as to whether or not this law was actually ever established or if it was just a cute little word of mouth that went around in line with Scotland's strong traditions of hospitality and such. But for the case of this video, and honestly just my little bubble that I like to live in, I'm gonna assume that that is true. And if this video gets 1,000 likes, then I will fly to Scotland myself and knock on random people's doors to ask if I can use their bathroom just to see if Scotland really is as hospitable as they say they are. And if they're not, I don't really know what the punishment is. And I'm not really sure if I could be the one to, you know, dish it out without getting put in the Scotland slammer myself. Anyway, A tier. Do you handle cattle by any chance? Do you own perhaps a cow or a horse? If you said yes to the latter, then I'm incredibly jealous. But do you own a farm, perhaps, with quaint little white picket fence and a classic red barn perched atop a rolling hill? If you said yes to any of these questions, then I have to ask you one more. Are you a raging alcoholic by any chance? If you said yes to both of those questions, then I have some news for you. Now, I don't want to immediately jump the gun and assume that you've handled your cattle while piss poor drunk, but technically because you said yes to being a raging alcoholic and not like a regular alcoholic, then hypothetically doing the math, then you are more likely to have done it than the average person. In which case, I hate to break the news to you, but you're now a criminal as per the Licensing Act of 1872. That's not medieval. Or whatever, you're still a criminal, you don't get a say in this. Since 1872, it has been an offence to be intoxicated and in charge of a horse or cow. This rule technically remains in the UK these days. It was never officially repealed, and the reasoning behind it being in place ever seems relatively straightforward. Public safety, not imposing endangering others, animal welfare, cows flooding the street, I get it. The punishment, like many others, were commonly fines and continued imprisonment. Under the Licensing Act 1872, the fine for being drunk while in charge of a horse, cow, or any carriage could be up to 40 shillings, which would be about £2 equivalently today. I'm sure, unfortunately, if you are currently jumping with joy thinking that you're going to get away lightly for riding a horse around the streets blackout drunk, they have probably upped the fine. But all in all, I actually kind of with this one heavy. I love my cows, I love my horses. I don't love drunk people so much. I'm gonna put this one at an A tier because you should always be treating your hooved friends with respect. Number 13. Do you like having fun? You do? Well, that's too damn bad. Established under the Metropolitan Police Act 1839. Jackie, that's not middle. I needed 15 rules, okay? Leave me alone. It was against the law for anyone to fly a kite or slide on ice in the street. Basically, take your gleeful little pleasures in life and shove them up your... This law was obviously established in a far different time period, reflecting the historical context of a time when urban places are becoming more crowded and authorities were focused on maintaining safety and order in public spaces. You know, flying a kite could lead to spooking horses towing carriages down the street, or it could entangle in things, and sliding on ice could... Well, it could either pose a problem to you by breaking a multitude of bones in your body, or it could hurt many other people as you go sliding down the street and striking them down like a bowling pin.
Nice!
Kids would generally just get a strict telling off by the police if they're caught doing these things, but if you were seen breaking these rules as an adult, you could be spending a few nights in the slammer. In my humble opinion, as someone who's never actually flown a kite, or at least I don't think so, and has certainly not slid on ice down a street, at least not by my own volition, because technically I've only just experienced my first winter last winter, and I was way too scared to start drifting on that shit because I almost ate shit twice and was terrified to put one step out of line afterwards. I would rank this an E. I get the intentions of public safety and whatnot, but let's be real, okay? Back in the day, that was probably like your only source of entertainment. So let the people fly their kites and break their bones in peace. Number 14. No beating or shaking any carpet or rug or doormat in any street, introduced to maintain public cleanliness. Because back in the Middle Ages, it was filthy. It was stankin'. Unless, however, there's an exception to this rule, before 8 AM. Because if you do it before 8 a.m, it's fine. The dust particles haven't woken up yet. And don't ask me how the logistics of this law works or even the crime, because I really don't know. Like, God forbid I just want to wake up on a nice warm morning and just beat my rug. D tier. Sadness to say this, guys, but we're coming up to the final law that I have done my research on to present and educate you all on today. And we're going out with a bit of a banger, both metaphorically and somewhat historically accurately, which is no witchcraft allowed, sadly. Tragic, truly, because as someone who is skeptical about the existence of magic, but highly in favor of it, I would love to be a witch if the opportunity ever so arose. I would use my magic only for good, though, and obviously a little bit of self-gain.
Oh,
because,
yeah.
let's be real, so would everyone else. And if you tell me that you wouldn't use your magical properties for at least a little bit of self-gain, kind of like the, you know, that motherlode code that you used to put into The Sims 3 to get the infinite money hack, then you're a big fat liar, okay? As you all know, back in the day, people were incredibly scared of the prospect of witches, as back in the Middle Ages, people weren't particularly the most knowledgeable about science or the way the world works around them. Humans, in general, do not like uncertainty, and the people of the Middle Ages were no different. And, I quote, "Usually, God was their answer for things that could not be explained. However, when it came to naturally occurring ill fortune such as sickness, bad harvests, and the deaths of animals, they blamed witches because God, in their eyes, could do no evil." That is a quote. I'm not religious, but just in case, don't come after me. But I state my case that witches are cool, for the most part, and did not deserve to be burnt at the stake for picking mushrooms in the forest and knowing which ones would not poison you upon eating them. Perhaps they deserve to be burnt if, you know, they put like someone's innocent child in like a stew or something. But even still, burning someone by the stake seems a little bit excessive. I'm gonna place this final law at an astounding F. Because as we all know, burning innocent, cool girls is not fun or nice, nor an ethically or morally justifiable thing to do. And who knows how much further society would have progressed had we not killed off all the witches. You know, we could have potions readily available at the grocery store right now. We could have like sick witch attire where it's normal to go walking around in billowing capes and layered skirts and large brimmed witch hats. We could have the ability to talk to our cats and other forest dwelling creatures. You get the picture. And there we have it, folks. 15 beautiful laws that summarize why living in the medieval ages would have likely sucked and been full of weird and wacky injustices. That being said, it's not like the current world is particularly perfect either. But seriously, doing my research for this video was a little bit of a wild ride, considering A, finding obscure laws / crimes of the Middle Ages was a harder task than I initially thought it would be, and B, when I finally did find one, then came another, and another, and another, and it felt like being sucked into a loophole, and before I knew it, I was pulled back into a time warp roughly 1,500 years ago. But this was honestly a lot of fun, and after my alcohol tier list video, which we do not talk about, was relatively well received, and considering how much fun I had making that, I considered I would give another tier list a go on some random obscure topic that I am weirdly interested and passionate about. And this is the result of the discovery of someone's own self-autonomy. Let me know what you think about me having the ability to ramble about whatever I want unchecked. Thank you for watching, and if you know of any other wild old laws or crimes that I haven't included, most definitely tell me because I'm very interested. And if you have any other ideas for videos, whether it be tier list or otherwise, also let me know because I would love to hear. Okay, lovely. It's been great. I'm gonna work today, so I'm probably gonna go back to bed or something. All right, I'll see you guys later. Bye bye.